Hey everyone, welcome back to the board game Bambinos. With it being some time since our last review, it seemed the adventure was all but lost. But fear not, your favorite die-rolling duo have much more to share. In our return, we decided to go toe-to-toe with the dead. The evil dead, that is.
Sounds groovy. And for the horror movie fans out there, this game brings the gore, scares, and outlandish scenarios so well remembered from Sam Raimi's cult classic.
Enter the world of The Evil Dead 2, the board game that turns a nice getaway trip to a remote cabin in the woods into a night of carnage and chaos as you and your friends fight to survive the night.
The game revolves around the infamous book known as the Necronomicon, and just like the films, the evil locked within its pages have been unleashed, and it's up to you and your friends to close the portals that have begun to open, releasing the evil into our world.
Each player will control one of 6 playable characters, each with their own abilities.
The board itself centers on the famous cabin used throughout the films, as well as the surrounding woods.
All throughout the board, there are item tokens that players must begin collecting. These tokens provide items and weapons that players can use to defend themselves or attempt to ward off the increasing number of enemies.
Along with items, players can also uncover lost pages of the Necronomicon. These pages are primarily needed in the process of closing the portals of evil once and for all.
The pages, however, can be used for other actions as well, as the power they hold can cast spells to help players become more successful during their turns.
The game plays out in turns, with each turn starting with the draw of an event card.
Each event will first start by spawning enemies, aka deadites, from one of the 9 portals across the board.
Each event will play out, with some having effects that will last until the end of the turn.
If you're unlucky, you may draw an event that allows for a boss deadite to spawn. These babies are real nasty ones.
Boss deadites have far more advantages than their lackey counterparts. They're mean, powerful, and ugly as hell. They can greatly change the dynamic of play once they join in on the fun.
But don't feel helpless. Nothing the old boomstick can't resolve. Players will have actions available to them as soon as the event card is resolved.
These actions involve moving around the board, scavenging or using items, and of course, the ability to attack and fight enemies.
It's important to note that not all encounters with enemies will be guaranteed successes. This can lead to characters becoming damaged or at risk of losing themselves to the darkness.
How is that, you say? Well, this is where your character virtues come into play.
In some scenarios, for example, an unsuccessful defense against an attacking enemy, players will be required to do what is known as a virtue check.
These checks may require players to draw from the corruption pile. Within this pile of cards are human and deadites.
If a player is unlucky and it is revealed at any point they are holding a deadite corruption card, that player has been taken by the darkness and has themselves become a deadite.
So each time a player has to make a virtue check, they increase their chances of becoming possessed.
At times, players will become aware they have converted over to a deadite before the other players know. And just like in the movies, they can still pretend to be your friend while secretly beginning to sabotage the outcome of the game.
Once it's discovered that you are in fact possessed, the players affected must then reveal their true form, and their objective becomes clear. They are out to stop the closing of the portals, and will kill or convert anyone getting in the way.
The deadite players will still be hellbent on obtaining the pages to the Necronomicon, only this time they are using the pages to open the portal permanently to allow evil to rule.
Don't forget your items. It's not every day you get to kill your friends with power tools.
Players will need to utilize items as they collect them in order to fight the deadites. Items can also be used to build traps, as well as barricades to fend off the enemies.
So hold on to your hand, or it might just kill you. Be the savior of the world or the destroyer in the Evil Dead 2 board game.
Groovy.
So the Evil Dead 2. So, first of all, if you've never seen the films, you know that they're pretty over the top.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of gore,
Oh, they're
a lot
great.
of crazy stuff. But
They're
classics, you know, if you're a big horror movie buffs like we are, we mentioned that several times before. Definitely got to love some of the original Evil Dead movies. Bruce
Yeah.
Campbell, he's funny in it.
Well, they're
great.
actually pretty comical as well.
They kind of are. I think,
Yeah.
it's interesting. If you watch the first film, I think it was meant to be a little more serious, but later on they
Right.
kind of expanded upon sort of the comic over
You
the
can
top.
see where its true
Right.
intentions lie.
So obviously, to create a board game based off of that, there's a lot of opportunity to have some pretty interesting stuff in there, and I think they did a great job on this one. It's definitely, it's got all the factors from the movies. You've got the specific characters. You get to play all the unique characters from the original film.
Right.
Even the Deadites. You've got these boss Deadites like the evil tree.
Right.
And
The apple.
what's the other one? Is it Greta?
Henrietta.
Yeah, I even got characters like Henrietta, which she's really known. A lot of people remember the scene, you're all gonna die,
Right.
or whatever. And that's really kind of famous from the movie. So it's really neat because they bring all those factors in. Of course, you're playing in the cabin, and the board's drawn out just, similar with the rooms and stuff from the movie. And, it's just a really fun game. It wasn't really difficult to learn. That's always good. I definitely like, a board game that you can learn easy and it's easy to teach to other people. So it wasn't hard to pick up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest enjoyment factors for me was the fact that it wasn't very hard to wrap your head around how the game's played, how it moves. It had a few different rules to it that you had to kind of keep in mind while you were choosing your moves or selecting certain items you wanted to use.
Yeah, it's definitely got a certain strategy to it.
Right. But it definitely wasn't, even for an average player, I didn't feel it was too over the top as far as bogging down the gameplay with rules and stuff of that nature. But I really enjoyed the atmosphere and the attempt to stay true to the films as far as the characters and the Deadites, and even the game's gameplay is centered around the movie itself. So I mean, it was a really cool and fun game to play. I'm really glad we got to do this one.
I know when we played, the maximum players you can have is up to 6 players.
Right.
But we played with the minimum's 3, so we played with the minimum just to get a feel for it. But I feel like we felt it was a little fast pace, and we thought that it would actually be more fun having more players. So that's something to keep in mind. Is that definitely I think when we try it out again, we'll probably try to get more people involved. So that's something to keep in mind. If you do play this one, we feel that it might be a lot more fun kind of going ahead and having the total 6 players. It gives you a lot more that's going on in the field, and maybe it'll draw it out a little bit longer. I also kind of liked the fact that the further you get into the game, as more bosses and more Deadites start spawning, the tension starts to build because now you're getting surrounded and there's large groups of them. I remember at one point you were like, my gosh, we're going to have to start killing these things at some point because we're not finding our Necronomicon pages fast enough, but there's Deadites just spawning out of portals left and right for every event that goes by. So the game really starts to pick up pace and things start to get more chaotic the further you get into it, much like the films.
Well, and they did a good job of balancing as well. So
Yes.
even though a lot of these monsters were being spawned, it wasn't such an arduous task to have to kill them. They actually make it very fair for the player. That doesn't mean you always win each battle, but they made it very fair for the player to be able to draw successful, to get successful rolls and to integrate the items that you collect throughout the game. I thought the game is really well rounded, very well done.
I'll just finish on this. The other thing that I thought was really fun about this one is the ability to kind of play both good and bad, and that you kind of have that advantage that if you say you find out you're a Deadite for the rest of the team, you can still kind of act like you're on their side, but start actually playing out things in the game that over time will start manipulating and making it harder for the other players. Very much like in the films, when they become possessed, they don't usually, they'll lure you in like, oh, it's just me, and you come close, and all of a sudden they reveal they're this demon, and they try to kill you. It's, and that's part of the fun. So, definitely some opportunities to really mess with your friends when you're playing and try to make the game go in your favor. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed it. I think it was a fun game. it's also something to look at. They've actually got an add-on for it, so you can buy. I think it's like an add-on pack, expansion pack for the board game.
I love it when games do that.
Yeah, it actually adds a few more bosses, I think, and maybe some new event cards and things. But there's that, for anybody out there that's interested and does like the game, there's that as well that you can expand upon it and play more of the story. So
yeah,
I definitely like it when they do stuff like me too.
I definitely give a thumbs up on it. Yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. Be sure to check it out in the link below. The Evil Dead 2 board game.